waterboarding.
They're talking about wakeboarding. The thing about wakeboarding, every trick is an invert.
Backside.
One side, air railings.
A new dimension.
Everybody is going huge.
What do you think about waterboarding? I said, I like it a lot.
I don't think it's tough enough.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Grab Matters podcast. Here we got Daniel Jarrett on the mic today. How's it going, Daniel?
Going well, man. It's good to be here finally after months of DMs and chats and dreaming about
A lot of back and forth.
wakeboarding needs a podcast.
Yeah, so hopefully this will be the one. I guess we can just dive right into it. Kind of start with your early life, and then we can jump into some more wakeboard specific stuff. Where'd you grow up?
Rockford, Illinois. So born and raised here in 1980.
Cool.
Makes me old.
Yeah. Quick math is over 40.
Yeah, right. And I was born in the hospital my dad actually worked at as an orthopedic surgeon, so he started his career there. And my mom used to be an OR nurse, but she basically put my dad through medical school, and they grew up in the area too. Ended up landing here. This is home.
Cool. So I guess, growing up in Rockford, you got the Rock River here. Is that where you learned to wakeboard, or how'd you get into wakeboarding, first?
Rock River was always a part of it because we had friends that had houses on the river, or they trailered there, but it wasn't the primary. So I actually learned to barefoot on the Rock River.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
before wakeboarding?
No. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So I learned to wakeboard at the lake we went to in Indiana called Lake Maxinkuckee.
Okay.
So they had Culver Marina had this just awesome charm because it was on probably the best lake in Indiana. I think some big wig Indiana people, like the owner of the Colts, has a house in there now. Okay. It's the big ritzy lake now.
Gotcha.
Back then, like my parents looked at it buying a place when it was still affordable, and but they had this awesome, still do to this day, midday, everybody's tired. You can drive through this like long, windy moat, and Culver Marina's back there. And I just remember as a kid, we'd drive back there and grab candy and check out what was new in the pro shop. And so that summer, sure enough, they had the early renditions of a wakeboard.
Okay. And what age was this about?
I want to say probably 13. I think the Conley Razor was the first one we got.
Okay.
Like early. And then we had a video with Troy Navarro and Zane Schwink. And so to this day, my brother will joke about that. It was a how-to, like, I forget the name of it. Somebody's going to be laughing that I can't remember, but I just learned to ski board essentially.
Gotcha.
And it was Zane Schwink when he was super young, wearing like a shorty, just ripping, doing a bunch of, so that was the early start for me.
Okay. And you guys had a boat, what kind of boat did you guys have? Yeah.
My dad's first boat was a Switzer. And I think that's maybe what I learned to ski on when I was, like 5. And then I learned to slalom at 7, learned to barefoot a couple years after that, and then wakeboarding, in the early 90s.
Okay. Yeah.
So we were trailering the boat to Indiana, to Lake Max. And then in 94, they ended up buying a place in Lake Mills, Wisconsin, on Rock Lake.
Okay. So
which is 30 minutes east of Madison.
Okay. So when you got that, or your parents got that property up in Wisconsin, was that, say, when you kind of really got more into wakeboarding and took it a little bit more seriously, or?
Yeah, that's when it turned the corner, because my dad was not a golfer. He was not as his business grew, and like they knew that they wanted to invest in a lake house, and they could. Like my best memories as a kid were on the lake.
Yeah.
And my childhood friend, Matt Wickstrand, our parents used to pass us over the fence when we were super young to play with each other. And, to this day, he's like my OG riding buddy. We went snowboarding last winter with our families. Cool. Like he's lifelong family. But he and I were like back and forth, pushing each other that whole childhood. So he ended up moving from Rockford to Madison, and they lived on Mendota. And so between Mendota, right, beautiful because the UW Capitol and the just everything about that. UW is one of the best college towns in the country. It's awesome. So between going to his house to ride and him come to Lake Mills, we had just such a blast. And then just invite our friends, and it just grew. And then another buddy of mine, his dad was a partner of mine at the orthopedic practice. So Nick Schmell, once he's a bit younger than me, but he was like the next phase of the guy that I was riding with and pushing each other. And he ended up getting way better than me.
Okay. So growing up wakeboarding, did you ever think of it as something that you'd be doing, down the road as a career path, whether it be riding or being involved in the behind the scenes thing side of the sport? Was that ever cross your mind, or was it kind of a, goal, go into college, do the kind of traditional, path?
So 96 and 97, we took a trip for spring break down to Christian Family Ski School, which was Thomas Harrell's family's camp. And so right after we learned to wakeboard, we were, I think, looking through Water Ski Magazine and saw the classified and did an Orlando trip 2 years in a row. And that, again, that was the main catalyst, but that was the early time. I remember we were thinking like, okay, watching Thomas, Scott Job. I forget who rolled through that week. I think Byerly was there briefly because he was helping Thomas, I think, work on Thomas had a huge board with full tilt. I think he was the first to like make a big size. And I think Byerly helped him design that, if I'm correct. I might be mistaken, but like that 147 circuit board.
Okay.
But I remember thinking, okay, basketball is my true love. I've played since I was a kid. I always dreamed of following my brother's footsteps. Am I going to get a basketball scholarship? Or, man, you can see, like, it was already moving to Orlando was the thing. That's what you did then.
Yeah.
And I think it was a brief chat, and like, nah, it was never going to happen. Yeah. So,
okay. So your brother,
no. To answer your question, no.
Okay.
After the brief chat about no, I'm not moving to Orlando, or
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go to college there, and I was still going to pursue basketball. I played 4 years of college basketball, but every summer I was still
on the water.
Oh yeah, still on the water.
Okay, so I know you did play college basketball. Where'd you play? I guess where'd you go to school? Were you on scholarship, or was this kind of something more passion oriented?
Yeah, no, I was. I got a partial scholarship to Concordia University in Seward, Nebraska, just outside of Lincoln. And played all 4 years there, and we traveled to Hawaii, all over the U.S. Like it was small college ball, but it was NAI division is awesome because they do give scholarships, and the level's awesome. It's great.
Yeah,
like solid talent. Just because it's not D1, but it was a lot of scholarship players.
Is it D2 then, or
at NAI? It depends on where you're in the country. Like in Illinois, there's not as many NAI schools, but you get more than the central U.S.
Okay,
like Iowa and Nebraska and Kansas. I think there's just depends on pockets, but it was a great 4 years.
Okay. And what did you get a degree in?
Biology, minored in chemistry, was going into medicine.
Okay. And then what happened after you graduated?
Well, summer before my senior year, I had 2 girlfriends.
At the same time?
No. They were really, I was close to them, but I actually didn't date them, but they were just really good friends. And they brought me to this model search in Lincoln. It was like, okay. Sure enough, I ended up signing with an agent in Chicago, and
that day,
I think weeks later.
Or, yeah,
so
very
I went to this
afterwards.
search, and like it was, probably the worst way of going about doing it. But they were the catalyst to get me to do what I'd never even thought of getting into the fashion industry, and signed with a Chicago agent, and then moved to New York that fall after graduation in 2002. So I was going to try to go into PA school, and then modeling happened, and I had enough big jobs. Like my first casting, found myself in Calvin Klein's office for a huge job. It didn't happen, but I was up for a big job, and it was like enough of a sign
in the
of
conversation.
Like, where I was like, okay, I should probably check this out and theoretically pay for grad school.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so you started modeling, and then did you just keep leaning into that as it kind of unfolded?
Exactly. Like my first agent, he was always saying like, your problem is going to be when to get out, because you're going to have this never-ending carrot dangling. And theoretically, and as I'm kind of seeing now, like the older I get, things should actually still get better. So that carrot's still dangling, even as Westrock grows and all that. But you're only as good as your last job. And I've had enough pretty good ones to where it's like, okay.
You've built up a big resume.
Yep. Keep it rolling. Just like any other sales position, but I'm as bad as it sounds. Like I'm the product.
Yeah, you're selling yourself. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
We can dive in later about how you're kind of balancing, modeling, wake park, family, wife, all that.
Yeah.
But I think we kind of start back with starting the wake park. So you're in New York, you're modeling. That's your full-time gig. We could maybe first talk about meeting Amy. I think that's probably a big turning point in your life, I would imagine. I don't know when that happened, so we kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I was already living in New York, and I would come home for the summer to wakeboard and spend time with my folks. I was renting an apartment through some friends that I met while traveling in Europe, and they end up being my primary New York contact. And again, I would come home. And summer of 2004, I met Amy through a mutual friend. I dated a little bit in New York, but nothing serious. And this friend was like, I think I've got somebody I want you to meet. And I think as a lot of people realize in life, like the older you get, if you miss that college window and you don't get the MRS degree, it's tough to not find that your significant other.
Yeah, the crowd thins.
It does.
Yeah.
It gets tricky. Yeah, and so I was stoked. Like, didn't give me of it. We went on a date. She actually came up to my parents' cabin for the first time, and the joke is she kind of hustled me. It was a cold, rainy day, and Amy's like, "Yeah, I can do this." She's an athlete. Like, I didn't know that at the time, but she gets up and is carving, and like, I'm like, this girl, okay.
She can hang.
Oh yeah, she can hang. Like she went all out. She's now since like stepped back a bit. She does, yeah. I think this summer she'll get out and ride a bit. Anyway, but we met summer of 2004, married fall of 2005, and right after getting married, we moved out to New York. Max, our oldest son, was born in 2010, and then Evelyn in 2013, Willa in 2016. So after Evie was born, that was the turning point in New York where you just hit that wall as transplant New Yorkers, where you can only rent a car to go get groceries so much. And I was hauling grocery bags through the city, through the subway, loved our time there. But 2013 that ended up being the time where I started to look at West Rock started to bud,
Okay. And I mean, are you having the conversation with her about, do we want to raise our kids here in New York?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I have to imagine that's one of the primary conversations you're having. So you're moving back to Rockford, and West Rock's budding. What's like that beginning, process look like when it comes to, hey, I want to start a wake park, or I'm thinking about starting a wake park?
Yeah. Summer before we moved home, I was standing on the dock at my parents' place, and my brother's best friend at the time, I pitched the idea to him because I had called Jordan McCormick, then the U.S. distributor or sales guy for Sesitec U.S., and I was like, hey, what does it look like for a guy who doesn't have super deep pockets to get a park going? And my brother's friend basically came up the next day, and we were standing on the dock. He's like, I think I've got a lake for you. And all of a sudden, like, the ball started rolling. I was like, okay. And Amy and I, we already knew we were going to come back because our family's here.
Yeah.
And having young kids in New York is awesome because it's like a glorified college campus. We meet you and your girlfriend in the top of the building across the street, and then it's just so much easier to get together. Whereas in Michigan and Illinois, dude, weeks go by, and if you're not super intentional about getting together with friends to have beers, and it's tough. Whereas New York, you just naturally pass.
And you have
by.
to drive anywhere, you just
totally.
Yeah.
So anyway, it started that summer, and then was it summer of 2013, and then by like winter, we moved home December of 2013. So we started telling all of our New York friends, we're like, I think our time's up. I mean, we'd lived there a lot longer than most average transplants. So it was a pretty good run in New York, but
yeah.
December of 2013 is when we moved home. West Rock opened up late summer 2014.
Okay. So you had all of summer of 2013. That was the planning process, figuring it out. I guess you started with two towers, correct?
Yeah.
Was that a way of you kind of proving the concept as well as dipping your toes into starting your own business and seeing if a full-size cable is going to be something that's, viable here?
Absolutely. That was 100% the intent, because the friend, my brother's friend, the lake that he had ended up falling through. And so we were already rolling along with the planning process, and that lake fell through, ultimately because of how much they wanted for the lease payment.
Okay. And where was this in Rockford though?
Yeah,
this lake as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gorgeous lake. I mean, tons of expansion potential.
Yeah.
Big, beautiful, clear water. Like it was really cool. anyway, that falls through. And so my brother is like, hey, you should at least talk to the park district. They've got some lakes in the area. I was sort of worried they were going to poach the idea, but as I now know, like the park district is just, they're rock stars. Such a great team. And that's why we went from just like 13 to a park open in 14. Like that doesn't happen. Like to get a park open that quickly, even just a 2.0 park is unheard of. And that's how cool the park district is in terms of their help and their.
They made it that much easier for you.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so 2.0 is like, we knew that with an SBA loan and, you know, this small team to get it going. And as a wakeboarder, I knew that it had to have room for riders to progress. And I knew enough about cable. Looking back, do I wish we would have probably started with a full size? I mean,
hindsight 2020. I mean, you never know.
Yeah, you just, every lake has its demons, and I don't care how big and beautiful the water is. After owning a cable and knowing all about so many different locations and what the challenges that all these other parks go through, I'm glad we did it the way we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Slow and steady growth. Like it's just been, we kind of hit certain goals and see how the market's reacting. And, you know, I think any small business owner's lying if they aren't thinking about an exit strategy, you know. You know, I don't think anybody wants to hear that from me, but I mean, I definitely joke about like the moment I stop loving wakeboarding, that's bad for West Rock.
I don't know if that day will ever come, but
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you did jump in a little bit about the relationship with you and the park district. What is that relationship? I know, obviously, the park operates in a public park, and I guess that's public water, correct?
Yeah. So Levings Lake was donated to the park district in the early 30s by Thomas Goodsman Levings, and it was a farm, and there was a creek that ran through it. They dug it out, dammed it up to create a recreational area. And it had gone through a bunch of iterations, but ultimately had some pretty tough times during certain decades. And they ultimately just a fishing lake, but they had a swim beach. And we leased the building for where our pro shop, now called the Wooden Handle, is. That's our check-in area, and then we lease the lake usage, and they get a percentage of sales. Okay.
And would you say that, you know, the lease price, you know, would it be less comparatively if you were doing it like the lake you were previously thinking about?
Yeah,
okay.
That was a private owner who, yeah, he was a great guy, but it just was
purely business.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you just, any wake park, you need to have that people that get it. Like it's not a get rich quick scheme.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are incredibly lucky to have that team.
So the city of Rockford definitely sees the benefit of having something like a full-size cable and obviously 2 towers. You know, that business, they see the value of that brings to Rockford. So they're obviously, you know, wanting to make it work however they can with you to kind of keep it going and let it grow.
Yeah, I mean, their number one job, and as they would repeatedly tell you, is to serve their constituents.
Okay.
And that is to serve this town and provide as many opportunities as possible. And they, like the snow park, and all these other, and I think Atwood, the mountain biking terrain area, like they want to partner with people that know what they're doing, because they admit that they don't know what they're doing, but they want to come behind people that do. And so
I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people need to admit is, you know, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that I need to trust, you know, the people that know what they're doing to let them do their work.
Consciously incompetent. Like, I love that phrase. I forget, a friend of mine in New York used to say it all the time. Like, are you aware of how incompetent you are? And that stuck with me. Like, I think about it all the time with being a small business owner and figuring this out every year. Like, I feel like I'm failing, you know, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And you just keep chipping away. So yeah, like, yeah. Okay.
So, you know, going forward, if someone's thinking about opening up a park, would you strongly recommend they try and work with their local governments first and park districts, you know, or just explore all the options and definitely don't leave that one off the table?
Absolutely. I think that is a major key to the U.S. cable growth. If you look at a lot of the parks in Europe, and the ways that they've done that, or even the infamous CWC, the Gov. I mean, there is a tourism impact.
Yeah.
And so Rockford's issue is, how do you retain young professionals? Because you've got Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, and Rockford is in such a strategic location. But if you don't do stuff like West Rock, why are families not going to just go to the Chicago suburbs, or why are they not going to?
Yeah, you got to have a draw still.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I agree. I think it's obviously we need to get more cables in America, and I think that's a path that would be, dutifully and well explored, by a lot of, aspiring business owners or people who want to open a cable.
Yeah.
I guess this is a kind of a vague question, but what were some early challenges and obstacles that you faced while you were opening the cable that, might not be so obvious? Some obvious business, struggles. What were ones that weren't so obvious, that maybe regarded cable?
I mean, I think it's both off water and on water. So off water, even as we were digging the cable, we started getting glimpse of what rain events would do to our lake, and flooding, and delays on pouring the in-ground anchors, just because they dug the hole and it had a rain and filled up with water, and I didn't know how much that would be an impact, but just the way that storms will impact us. We don't get to just turn the lights on. So like I'll roll over in the middle of the night and hearing the rain pound and go, man, what's the lake going to look like? Whereas a lot of these parks with man-made lakes can typically just show up and flip the lights on, and doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then on water, it's just all about looking at what I could find globally for a 2.0 park and how to best manage that. Like, I think a lot of the Canadian parks is because, Canada is so full. Their 2.0 scene is just solid. And outside of VWC, Flipside, there's a few here in the States that did it. Obviously VWC is what it is, and it's expanded the way they have, but Flipside but how do you really run a 2.0 with limited traffic and have people love it and want to come back? So the on-water challenges were just managing traffic flow, having people fall in love with it but want to come back, and what's that balance between pricing and So I mean, I could elaborate on a lot of that, but those were the things that drove me to be a total nerd about this.
Yeah.
Because it just seemed like people were like, oh yeah, just let everybody line up 50 people deep and
everyone have a terrible experience.
Yeah. And you wonder why people don't come back. So.
Okay. We can jump in later about the model, the business model you currently have, with reservations and whatnot.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let's kind of dive into the layout of the park. You obviously take a lot of pride in what you put in the park, the layout you have set up, constantly changing it up. Why is that so important to you?
Well, we cannot push snow and make a new transition. We can't use a snowcat and pick up a handrail. And so having my goal when we transitioned from a 2.0, and everything I kept learning about the business development was like, we need to be the first park in the world that's like the truly customizable all the time. Like everything can be combined. And that was my goal. I set out with Jordan McCormick, Maddie Mulholland, who used to work for Unit, David, still like the lead designer at Unit. Now John Dreiling, but that was the goal. Like I knew the initial investment in West Rock, I couldn't squander that, because when you go back and try to buy another feature, or I think that's why you see a lot of parks get stagnant, because it's tough when the cable needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
How are you going to go buy another feature?
Yeah. John always says, typically a park that opens, they're pretty much just going to stay with the same features they have. They have the budget for the features. And if you can get that as high as you can opening, that's your best bet. Because once the park's open for a couple of years, it seems like a lot of owners don't, take the money to invest in new features. That's something you have been doing. Kind of explain why you think that's important to you to keep adding to an already, ridiculously good park.
The reason I've done that is I've tried to just keep investing in the on-water experience as we slowly grow in other areas. So because we're on a park district property, I didn't have to build a building, parking lots, plumbing. If you can think about how many typical construction things that we didn't have to spend tens of thousands on, I was able to invest in the water. And so as we've grown, I do want to keep in a way leading the way. But you also can't keep up with the Joneses. I mean, you see some parks in the world that just, are flipping through the unit catalog. Like, we'll take all 10 pages,
Yeah.
And so again, that goes back to, if David or Maddie or Jordan listen to this or watch it, I mean, they know how I was pretty annoying about it, just because I knew we had to just, I was obsessive about making sure we picked the right pieces. I wanted to cover every type of sensation, because again, you can't just go push snow out there.
Yeah.
And wake parks back then, I mean, we expanded in 17, and most parks, like, here's big iceberg chunk of plastic, and it wasn't super dynamic. So you just had tons of open water and big, huge features that, like, okay, it's just a big transfer. Like, how many big 450 transfers can you do? So
yeah. To play devil's advocate,
Yeah.
a lot of people I hear talking about, what percentage of your riders are would you say advanced or intermediate plus, basically, are really going to be, in that level?
Oh, it's pretty minimal, but I think that it plays into why I picked what we picked. Like, the bulk of our customers are intermediates, and they, like, I always say this, if you get tired of a flat bar, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like, if you can do every hit on a flat bar, all right, come back to me. Like, okay, but so on one hand, we want to hack and have this customizable park, but I want timeless. The beauty of board sports, I think, is still just like a timeless backlip.
Yeah.
And classic hits.
Okay. You're strictly unit for the most part. I think you have a corrugated floating out there somewhere. Why are you strictly unit?
So, the leaders in homemade is without question Valdosta. Like Quinn, Wes, Luke, the whole team of guys that have been through over the years.
Terry.
Oh my gosh, Terry, Derry, now Todd. I mean, you could just go down the legend.
Trav, yeah.
Oh god, yeah, the legends that have been there and have made features and designed things that now units using their ideas, basically, or other places. But for us, this is a perfect example. We had a long winter and no spring. And by the time we had the opportunity to open up and start chipping away at cable maintenance and all that, it was already go time. And so the reason I mention that is that, like, we just don't have time to tinker with stuff. So Valdosta, throughout the winter and during certain down times, like, they have the talent, the vision, the creativity. They're true artists on and off the water. And they have literally made a snow park on water. I mean, no question.
Yeah.
So I always start with that because I'm a fan. I believe in what they're doing. For us, like, we don't have time. Like, Memorial Day to Labor Day, it's really tough to justify. That said, I think because we have this super customizable park, our lake is shallow, I still want to integrate some features because of the curveball. And then, if when you put your business hat on, the issue is products liability.
Yeah.
Unit has products liability. The bulk of our riders are intermediates, whereas Valdosta, they draw way more, higher level riders.
Yeah, it's a destination park. I mean, obviously Westrec is as well. But.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, you have to think about the liability, both combined with, we can't justify tinkering and fixing and patching and designing new, and, like, we've got to make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah. Okay. So, someone who's opening up a wake park and they're going with unit, which I think is a good idea for the most part. You would stress how important it is what you pick and not just kind of throw a dart at the wall and go, okay, flat bar, transfer box, and, a pipe and a couple kickers and we're good. It's a lot more of a intense process choosing what you're going to get. Would you say that's, fair?
Oh yeah. Yeah. For me, it's timeless and dynamic. I was just talking to a local guy who's putting up a 2.0 in his pond, and the pyramid series is about as timeless as it gets, because it's It's a small little transfer box. It's a 3-foot flat bar. Anywhere from first time riders can ride up and over the transfer box. I mean, here I am sounding like a unit sales guy, but like it's, but to try to build a whatever 60-foot feature like that series, I don't care how good you are at welding and whatever. If you live in the Midwest and have harsh, long winters, seams are going to break. You're going to be replacing plastic. At some point, a screw is going to pop. So again, like for the Midwest too, I think people just, the impact that ice and winter has on our stuff, another reason why it just is not the same.
Yeah, and I think, I have some qualms with maybe some of the angles that unit chooses to still go with. Kinks, I think, should be quite a bit more aggressive than they have been. But you can't really argue with the longevity and the quality. It's not a unit sale.
Yeah, no,
either,
I just saw somebody doing a nose press on a flat down, and I was like, when I see the picture, I see the flat. But when I rewatched the video a few times. I'm sure you saw it last week too, and it was just like, wait, there was no flat. Like it was amazing.
It didn't make it any harder.
Right. It was right.
Yeah, which is the whole point, of a kink. But we don't have to dive down that.
Well, at some point we should though, because it's
okay. Let's do it right now.
I mean, if snowboarders are ever going to love wakeboarding, we need to get them into it, which some of them are ironically afraid of, we find plenty that are afraid of water as is, which is so funny. Or
yeah, and I've
like
seen
water.
it as well. It's hilarious.
Yeah, but when they do see it, like, and get into it, like I just want them to appreciate it. And wakeboarding forever has just been kind of the stepchild of board sports, and I don't know. I mean,
it's been the made fun of board sport for a long time. Yeah. I mean, you can attribute that to some just terrible riding when rails were first around, and up until 2010s.
Yeah.
And then also just everything's a super wide box for the most part, still in a lot of parks. So you think parks putting in more quote unquote aggressive and more difficult rails, is that something you would see as dangerous? Or are we so far behind right now in terms of the difficulty of the rails? Like, we have a long way to go in terms of what can be safe and what can be difficult still.
I think it's having a wide enough range of features to where when you do get the opportunity to show the sport, it looks legit. But at the end of the day, in order to get the most out of your community of riders, you have to have a path of progression. Yeah. And that's all it is. Like, I think unit has some narrower rails that could be, I'd like to see more of.
Yeah.
And again, the key is parks like ours, like really encouraging our riders to, spring, fall, whenever, go to Valdosta, like go ride at some of these other parks, and do what you do when you go. People travel all over the country to go snow skiing and snowboarding. Like, that's why Germany, granted, Germany is so much smaller. Europe in general is so much smaller. People can travel and just hop on a train and be in a whole other culture, and near 50 other cable parks.
Yeah.
So, we've got our limitations there, but.
All right. I say we break it up with a guest question. This one's from Taylor Watkins, down in Australia.
Yeah.
I think he's Daniel Watkins' son.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He says, why do you have to hop on every single damn trend?
Hop on every trend. I would love, if he was here, I would love to
elaborate on that.
I would love to elaborate, because I think we've said a bunch of them.
Okay.
Like what, and I think elaborate. Maybe you can fill in the blank for him.
You're a trendy guy for sure. I seems like you definitely, and maybe it's you just keeping up with the sport. Maybe that's what it is. Keeping up with what's hot, what's cool, what's new, in wakeboarding. And maybe that's something that's so unique that it can be confused for hopping on every damn trend. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think that, like, I'd be curious to say, like, and what trend is he talking about?
Skinny Stan Stan?
Oh, geez. Well, I don't think he knows me as a rider. To me, I think probably, it probably was the first time I met Wes, but and getting time with Wes and Dylan and Quinn and the guys. But like, I remember hearing the logic about why you want a narrower stance, because I grew up in the 90s era. You know, Thomas Harrell was my hero as a kid. And Thomas's stance was like crazy wide, super ducked, Wiley's bindings on that old full.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, and yeah, like, and as I got into cable, it made way more sense to me. And, you know, we saw Figgins' video going around last week.
That was good.
It's not skinny stance, it's normal stance. Like, he's right.
Yeah.
And so when I'm selling a board in the shop, I'm not thinking about passing on a trend. When I sell you a longer board with a narrower stance, I'm typically just saying, like, and I'll stand up and show them, like, all right, if I stand here and jump and try to swing my lower body around with my feet super wide, it's going to take a lot more to swing your board around.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
and maybe that's even referring to, you know, his question is, you have a pretty good relationship with Wes and Quinn and the Space Mob idea as a whole.
mm-hmm.
Explain the importance of what they've done, and maybe that's what he's referring to. You know, I don't know,
man. You should. Yeah,
I should have dove in a little bit more on that,
because, like, I think, you know, I know, to my understanding, we were the first park in the U.S. to do a monthly membership. You know, I was looking at all the ski resorts in the area, and I knew that we couldn't do what every other park was doing, which was charging $1,000 a year. And we did that. And now you look around the US, everybody's got a membership. And some of the video contests, like, I think we were the first to do Keys to the Cable. Here I sound like I'm trying to, like, defend myself, but that's, like, I think that when people ask about West Rock's impact, and I think if Quinn were sitting here about Valdosta or Langenfeld or the Bricks, like, I think everybody, because it's such a small sport, and now the way social media impacts the, you know, who's done what, I'm always the first to, like, I want to give credit where it's due, you know? And so, yeah, I'm proud of some of the stuff we've done. So if I jump on a trend, like I was just talking about skinny stance.
Yeah.
Like, when Wes and whoever was mentioned, like, explaining the reason, to me, it's not a trend. It's,
if it makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, a longer board. How many snowboarders we get that walk in the shop and be like, dude, I'm not buying a wakeboard that's bigger than my snowboard. And then you think about, okay, a wakeboard is on a soft surface.
A lot of resistance.
If it's got a continuous or 3-stage rocker, you name it, like, in terms of drag, etc. Just even the way that imagine a spoon going through the water. So I would think you'd want more surface area to have less drag. Your arms are going to be less tired. And then once you start landing, when you start pressing, you've got more board to press, softer landings. Like,
yeah, Adam and I were talking about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
You wouldn't jump on a surfboard and be like, I'm not jumping on a surfboard that's, you know, bigger than my snowboard.
Yeah.
Well, they're both on water. They're both having a lot of resistance. You know, I think you'd want a lot more surface area. And personally riding, and I know you do as well, bigger board is just a lot easier and a lot more fun.
Oh yeah. I mean, even just nose butters and, like, all the thing at 42 years old, like, I just want to learn as many fun classic tricks and just do it as long as I can.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Let's jump into the reservation model. That was kind of next up here.
Taylor, I want you to clarify, man.
Yeah, clarify. Let me know. We'll circle back on this one if you got a good.
We're just followers to Taylor. Jeez, we haven't got an aqua park yet.
Yeah. Oh, there we
We
go.
jump on that trend. I mean, I wouldn't mind one, but, like, we just can't do it.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're on a reservation model.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't always start like that, did it? With the full size, it's always been reservation.
No.
Okay.
When did we go to that? I think COVID kind of pushed that because I always wanted to.
Why? Why'd you always want to go with the reservation?
As many people that have tried to say that cable parks are ski resorts for the summer, they're right and they're wrong. And the reason is we cannot have thousands of people on the dock. You and I go to whatever Michigan ski hill and snowboard for the day. I mean, they can pack it in. And we've seen crazy growth in ski resorts all over the country. Cables just don't have an unlimited traffic flow. And so if you drive 4 hours from Grand Rapids, I want you to know that, like, you're going to have a predictable experience and get that West Rock, like, get that experience, you know, because then you start trying to sell 2-hour passes. And if you've got a gazillion people in line and you in that family that drove from wherever and little Johnny rides twice, what value is that?
Yeah. Obviously that, you know, a lot of people do compare it to snowboarding and skiing, but the throughput is just not even close to comparable.
Yeah. So I think, again, there are things to take from ski resorts, and I will always appreciate our roots with snowboarding. But in terms of business model, it's just not the same.
Has it been working better than before?
It's been awesome because if we have a cable issue, we have weather. Like, I can look at the whole list. I can send a group email and say, hey guys, sorry, we're going to reschedule you at your earliest convenience. X, Y, and Z happen. And it's just, when people show up, they know what to expect.
Okay. I don't want to dive too deep into the specifics of it, but maybe the biggest issues, quote unquote, I have with that is either a season pass holder, so they always have to make a reservation every time they want to ride. Are there slots dedicated to them, like season pass holder versus general public? So they're basically almost always guaranteed to be able to ride. How does that work for the season pass holder?
Yeah, and I think that will be, and that already is in the back of my mind in terms of how to, as our business grows, how to make sure that space is available. And like a lot of, I know one of my favorite breweries, they have a mug club, and they make it kind of a pain in the butt to be in that mug club. It's such a cool process, and every year you get a new like custom hand done.
Is this Prairie Street?
No, Tyranina and Lake Mills. Beautiful, clay mugs like that they have, behind the bar.
Yeah. It's
so cool. And they cap it off. And so at some point, do you have to restrict how many members you have? And again, I'm not saying that's the answer,
yeah.
but cables have gone one way or the other, where when I was developing the cable, I had countless people say, you need to charge your members as much as possible because they are going to suck you dry. They are going to be on the dock all the time. They're never going to spend any new money. They're going to be the biggest pains in your
always
ass.
The ones complaining.
Totally. The world revolves around them. You read any good business book and they'll say, you're going to spend way more money on trying to get a new customer.
Customer acquisition, yeah.
So in terms of, that's a high priority. Like, I want our customers. That's why we call it a core membership, because they're part of the core of our business. They're family. Like, we go down so many rabbit holes with that, with why they're so important to our business. But yeah, so like members, they're not charged, but it's really is about traffic management. And if they have to, if they're pushed to ride at slightly different times, like ideally we want to fill up more and more of the whole schedule instead of just, that's the problem with 0 reservations. Go to any cable on a Saturday. Everybody wants to ride at noon and then get on to whatever they're doing. And it helped even our traffic flow out. Because you, the member, are like, you know what? Sunday evenings is dope.
Yeah.
It's a little chill. Like, and that's what members end up finding. Like, they're not going to go and, everybody else is.
Okay. So I don't mean to go on the other side of this, but another issue I see with this is like, action is on a highway, as a lot of cables are, and pretty much, should be for the most part, is the easiest form of free advertising is having people drive by. What if someone were to show up on a Saturday and they decide, hey, we want to try this today. We jump in, all the reservations are full. Mm-hmm. That's a bad customer experience. No,
it is, unless you take 2 minutes to explain why you do what you do. And when I give my explanation to that person, they get it. And to me, the biggest one is, you look at OWC. If you've landed at MCO, you've driven by OW. How many people are driving by? As awesome as highway viewing visibility is great, how many people drive by and go, oh, what was that? And it's like, most people don't really know what it is. So in the age of social media and the internet era, most people are going to find us now online. And so the rare chance that I have somebody just drive by, it's an easy chat. Like, we care about your progression so much and you falling in love with the sport that I'm going to tell you to come back at this date, because I want you to get on the water. I want you to experience the full experience. I don't want to just hand you a cable pass and say, good luck. Because you and I go to a double black out west. I'm not the greatest snowboarder in the world, but I can bust my ass all the way down with it. Like, I know you're better than I am, but like snowboarding, and I had a park owner say this to me, like, well, nobody turns anybody away at a snow park. Well, again, you can scoot your ass down a double black all day
and not affect anyone else's experience.
No. Whereas if I put a dock full of beginners, now I'm screwing up the members flow. Now I'm like, you're not helping anybody. So to your question, like, again, I want to hold their hand through the best possible way to have them fall in love rather than try to make a quick buck in the moment.
Yeah. I think it's a good model. And obviously it sounds like it's been working for you, more so than before. I guess I would say
no two parks are alike. And so with Terminus is set up with a beginner cable and an advanced cable, I think you've got opportunities where it's a little easier to let a first timer slide off a dock that's going really slow all day long.
So I was going to ask you about that. The difference of parks that just have one cable versus parks that have, beginner 2 towers or Ricks and Little Bros and a full size versus parks that have, all three, the 2 tower, the beginner cable, and the advanced cable. What do you think would be the optimum situation, based on what you've experienced so far?
There are a lot of days that I do wish we had another full size. A handful of the German setups like Turn Cable. I mean, they've been a legendary park for a long time. The Bricks and Langenfeld with 4. I think Terminus does a great job. I think to me, the key ultimately is just do not minimize how effective 2.0s are, because I still think that you can use a full size almost as a crutch to where just because you can get massive amounts of people in, there's nothing like a 2.0. You just can prevent face plants. You can have somebody get up the first try with proper land training. And so I think a 2.0 that's properly used, whether it's 1 or 2 like we have, but I've often joked, like, I hope to have the busiest 2.0s in the country, because that means I'm actually growing the sport, because they don't get on the full size once and never come back. Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you've been running, 2 tower parks a while now. I don't know what you learn on a 2 tower. To me, it seems like you learn how to get up, and then the turnaround does not apply to the full size. And from what I experience, at least, it's totally different than rounding corners on a full size cable. So do you see the value in the 2 towers being getting up, getting confident, learning how to turn? And do you think the turnaround transfers to the full size, or is that something that's why you wish you would have a beginner full size as well?
So I have a few things with my coaching philosophy that I'm like, there are open-handed issues and closed-handed issues. And one of my closed-handed issues that I hold on tightly is every time you learn at West Rock in a never ever class, I teach our instructors to make sure that they do proper land training, and they go through, we allow 4 people in a 2-hour block. So effectively 30 minutes per rider. And when I put that first rider in the lake, I am teaching them, but I'm teaching the group simultaneously. And they are learning so much along the way to be ready for the full size. And I am so closed-handed about, I want to teach a rider how to ride directly under the cable and do nothing. Stand there, balanced, handle positioning. They sink, you turn them around, you bring them back, whether it's halfway or all the way down. And when they come back, you'll point. If they're goofy or regular, which way to initiate that 2.0 turn. And depending on what their reaction is, they'll either turn their hips and now the board is sliding, or they'll properly edge. And now you've got the perfect opportunity to teach them how a wakeboard edges. And the reason we teach the turn at each end before I teach carving, even though the turn is not applicable to over on the other side, it keeps our customer on top of the water. So you're a first-time rider. I get you up. Boom. You're up and riding. I drop you. I say, all right, I'm going to teach you how to carve. You're going to spend a lot of your lesson in the water. Whereas if I keep you up on top, now there's that like, just the stoke is like, it grows. And yeah, there's a business component too. Yeah, I want that person to come back to a next steps class, which is the next, and sometimes people fly through it and don't need another class and they move on to a slow ride on the main cable. But no, the turn does not really apply over there.
But it's a customer experience.
It's all about, man, I almost got my turns this week. And they are just getting so much more water time than in the water, right?
Yeah.
And the moment they get a turn and they're lapping back and forth, it's just their confidence, their board skills.
It's enjoyable now. It's a great time.
It is, and they feel the value. And then that way, the moment they get turns, now I can say, okay, let's slightly carve, work on toe side, heel side. All right, this time I'm going to slow you down. I want you to rotate your hips really slow. Let's learn how to ride switch. Let go with your backhand this time. Let's try to ollie. Like, there are so many foundational skills that unless, imagine somebody on a slow big cable, who is holding your hand through that? Unless you luck out and you're on the dock with somebody that's like, hey, have you tried this? Like, you got to luck out.
Yeah.
Unless the deckhand or like the park is really good about coaching, but it's tough to, once you've got a dock full of people and, 6 carriers full, you're not getting
it's
that
a full-time
personal
job keeping that operational, let alone,
right. Yeah. So again, I nerd out about this stuff, but it's all about long-term retention.
Yeah. So you can quickly run through it, but what is the optimal situation for someone who wants to just start wakeboarding at West Rock, don't have any experience in board sports? How do you walk them through all the way to getting up to riding the full-size cable at full speed?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's different, but it's never, ever next steps, slow ride.
Okay.
Those 3 classes. And those are not included in our membership. They're $25 each. It includes your equipment, coaching. And I theoretically want people to go through that. And again, somebody may end up getting done with their 2.0 class, and our coach will say, you do not need a next steps class. You're ready.
Yeah.
Go book a slow ride next time.
Okay.
So
I see a lot of value in the full-size slow ride. What do you guys operate, hourly, full-size slow ride? What, not percentage of open hours is it, but what do you, run?
Every year we're like, man, we just don't have enough.
Yeah.
You just don't. Cause you're building a base of riders, and our slow ride on the weekends from people that drive in from all over it's just been packed for summers. So like 10 to 12 is always full, and you're left going, man, do we run slower more on the weekends? But then the people that travel to see us, because we've tried to build the park that people want to travel to, you don't want to make the couple that's camping at Rock Cut have to wait until 2 to show up to ride. Like, that's not cool either. So, days where you're like, man, I wish we had a full size on the weekends, a second full size. Yeah.
Fair. Yeah. That's a never ending battle.
Yeah.
Let's kind of dive into the artistic side of things. You have been known, at least ever since I saw West Rock start, to be very focused on your brand image, the merchandise you have, working with, talented artists. Why is that important to you, and what value do you place on that, that brings you as a business and West Rock as a business?
Yeah. So when we were developing our brand back in New York, we started to get ready to move home. And I had a friend who did our original West Rock script. I mean, that's all hand done. And Chris Rushing is his name, just super good guy, great friend of mine back then. And I had shown him kind of the range of what was in the US for branding. And he had won like a Webby and Emmy for graphic design through like a 9/11 project he did.
Okay.
And then he worked at GoDaddy for a while. Dude was good. So I was fortunate with also my, my fashion background at that point. So I already was, fired up about how to make clothes that people are going to want to wear, not just some cheesy graphic of a guy doing a hoochie glide with West Rock behind, overlaid. You're a big hoochie glide guy.
Big,
right?
big glide and railing guy.
Show me one later. So that's all. Like, it's all about making clothes that people are actually going to wear, and then the brand just tells so much of the story, and it just makes everything feel more connected. And then how to support other small businesses. So just always looking for ways to just support other people. Like it's like so much of this. I don't care what area it is. It's relationships.
I was just about to say that. I was going to say
yeah.
it's super, important to have those relationships with people outside of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's now that we're getting ready to open a beer garden, like the years of working on trying to work with local artists, and you just never know which community, as you befriend and just support people, like love your neighbor. It's as simple as that. Like, so for me, it's, supporting local businesses and again, with the beer garden opening up, musicians and that are friends of artists that we've worked with. Like, so it's just kind of all coming together,
Yeah. Let's talk about the beer garden. I know that's been something that's been in the works for a while. You're finally getting it off the ground. Obviously you're excited for that. What do you think that'll bring to the park? That maybe was a missing link, before.
Yeah. So back when we built our cable, Jurgi Koziel, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He helped run Hexagon back in the day, and this is his graphic. Incredible artist. But he and Sam Adams and Kyle McCutcheon built our cable, and Jurgi was just adamant back in the day when we expanded. He's like, you need food and beverage. Like, look at any of the top cables, and he's right. Like, it's just, we've got this old beach house and limited funds, and to do it right, I've never wanted to do things just to do them. And we didn't have a space, and now, as of last year, we built a deck with the park district, so now there's a proper space, and now it's go time. And Jurgi was right from day one. Like, again, you could list off every cable in Germany that does it right, and people that never are going to water ski, they're coming to have a picnic and grab a beer and just be a part of the community. So that's the Wooden Handle is the name of it.
It's a good name.
Yeah, I wonder where that came from.
I don't know. It must have been up all night thinking about that one. Huh?
Yeah. So the Wooden Handle will be our new like pro shop. So gear and beer.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I think that's really important to add. It's no longer just wakeboarding. There's a lot of different things. A guy can bring his girlfriend and maybe daughter or whatever, and they can hang out for a while, as opposed to just, hey, sit over there on the bench, watch me wakeboard for 2 hours. You can go grab a drink, grab some food. Super important just to have an all-encompassing, business that everyone can enjoy.
Yeah, and that's for sure been our problem. We kind of got lulled to sleep and probably didn't do enough creature comforts. So just having a more well-rounded business model, and ultimately we just don't have easy money. Our lake is too shallow for an aqua park. We're very focused on water skiing, wakeboarding, like being a rider park for all skill levels. But having some passive income is just going to flat out help the business.
Yeah. If the lake was deep enough, would you have gotten an aqua park?
Yeah, I've never been anti, for sure. I get it. I just think that I think they're in some sense they're oversold, being over pushed on certain places, because I think it still requires a perfect location for it. And even if we had a big, deep, crystal clear lake, would a swimming beach just be enough?
Yeah.
I don't know. They've gotten better, more durable, and I love the exposure aspect because they require zero skill, and that's ultimately why they're so great. Here, sign a waiver and go. It's like a trampoline park.
Yeah.
But the culture aspect, they're not culture creators. So you're not going to, a kid, once he jumps off the big iceberg a bunch of times, he's going to have fun. But I think long term, you still want to have them, all families, working on a skill and being a part of the community and affecting the culture. Whereas, again, an aqua park is just a throughput business.
Yeah, I think it would be similar to, we don't want to compare too much to ski resorts, but it would be similar to snow tubing at a ski hill versus actually skiing and snowboarding.
Totally.
You're doing a controlled, thing you can progress versus let me just sit here and go down the hill.
And anybody that hates on aqua parks, just like tubing hills, come on.
It is what it is. I mean,
yeah, if you can help if it helps just the bottom line and your business's ability to pay its employees better, 100% believe in it.
Yeah.
It's just, I think there are times and places like ours where it's not effective use of our
wouldn't
money.
mesh well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Totally get that. We can jump into, you're hosting Stop One of the Space Mop Tour. I know we're just came out now that we're talking about it. But I'm sure when this comes out, it'll be maybe already happened.
Depends on your editing skills.
They're not good. They're not good. All right. So also Langenfeld Open's going on right now. What do you see as a path forward to a more successful competitive cable circuit, or however you want to say it. I think Space Mob Tour is going to be awesome. I think Langenfeld Open's done super well. But in my opinion, I think we have a lot of different things going on and not all under one umbrella or one roof.
Oh,
it's a big can of worms.
Oh man, what a can of worms. I think just competing in board sports, in the history of board sports, that alone is the issue, right?
It's anti-culture, yeah.
It's subjective. And, you know, watch Dear Rider, watch the Tony Hawk documentary. I mean, go through, and those two movies specifically, in the way that they deal with competing, I think can tell us a lot. And so, you know, for all the WWA's positives and negatives, you know, I think they've tried. And then you've got the IWWF in Europe. I don't know, man. I think, and then you've got people that are trying to blaze their own trail. So at some point, we're going to have a lot of people doing a lot of cool stuff, but is there enough cohesion? You know, look at the Lithuanians. I mean, some just incredible events, and look at how packed the shorelines are. Like the culture of wakeboarding is there.
Yeah,
it's so cool to see. So I feel like I'm just so focused on the U.S. needing way more parks in the Midwest specifically, not down south, that, you know, when it comes to competing, I just want to be a part of. And that's why when Bobby Sutherland and the guys at Space Mob were like, hey, you know, would you be a part of this? To me, it's about just partnering with the right crew to hopefully show the sport the way we want to show it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then continuing, as you and Dylan Mead know, like, two old friends of West Rock, like the reason that some of the events that we've done with you guys back then, like, it's all about culture and progression and not obsessing over competing. So I'd like to see some uniformity and you know, you end up in the whole discussion about, well, what about the Olympics?
It's never going to happen, by the way.
Oh,
wakeboarding the Olympics on the right, never going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's the machine powered.
It's not going to happen
because of the machine powered thing.
Yeah, and I mean I don't know. I was in some comment section on Instagram saying that it's not specifically against the rules. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen though. You know.
Yeah.
I think it's against the idea of the Olympics to have a machine powered thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bummer just because I do think that cable would be a fairly easy thing for an Olympic Village.
100%. Yeah.
You know, and like, not to cut off the branch I've been sitting on my whole life, because I was fortunate to grow up around boat, but there's nothing worse than watching a boat contest, or especially a wake surfing contest.
That's a hot take right there.
Well, I mean,
a lukewarm take, honestly, but
I mean, and like, both are really fun and awesome, but to watch somebody do a trick from 100 yards away, it's not an on-site spectator sport.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And so some cables, depending on the shape, are just as bad. Like, oh, I think he did and that, like, and with rail hits, like, to watch a rail hit from across the lake, that's not any better. So I'm not, but to see somebody do a surface 360 on a surfboard 100 yards away, and like, they're better on TV, you know, and unfortunately we've kind of lost our ESPN, you know, influence. And that's, again, we keep saying that's another topic we could dive into, but I think so much of the way that we have handled events from the boat side, and then now we have to figure out how to get communities to come out and fill the shorelines. You know, so boat has always been about boat sales. I think cable, and that's, you know, hopefully at the end of June, hopefully we bring out some local people and really get the word out.
Yeah. So do you do points chase? Have you done points chase?
We signed on again this year.
Okay.
And that was we did it back in the 2.0 days. We took a break. And then philosophically, I was kind of against getting back into it, because I just people kept saying, I didn't have a great time. We drove down there, barely rode, spent all this money. And then on the flip side, people were like, it was just fun to just be with our team. And so I wasn't like a hater about it, but I knew that West Rock had to focus on culture. Like, I didn't want to open up May 1st and then fall into the points chase schedule, and then effectively have our community have to start competing against each other when they just
started riding.
They just put their snowboards away. Yeah. And so here we are, like, and of course, OWC and all these southern parks, they get to ride 12 months of the year. I mean, it's I think parks like Action and others have shown that you can be competitive even though you're in a seasonal market and produce, but it's going to take time for West Rock to develop the riders that can hang.
Yeah.
And so I think really skill development, local culture contests. That's where my heart's been. And I think now this year with Space Mob and getting back in points chase, and we'll probably do like a day qualifier, and those that want to spend the money to go to Florida for nationals, like we'll get in the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think competition is cool. And I think some people are more into it than others. The tough thing with the points chase is, from what I've heard at Action, at least, you fly down there, like you were saying, and you don't get to ride at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of kids want to do that. There's hundreds of people down there. The real true competitors want to be like, okay, yeah, I want to, go up against all these other riders and win. But I think for the most part, it's people who just kind of want to hang out with like-minded people, board together. And if you're not getting the on-water time, it's kind of a big waste of time and money to go all the way down there and do that.
Which is why I've said a lot lately. Like today, this morning we were watching LAO because it was going on, and I would love our young up and coming riders at West Rock to be live. I hope they were watching the live stream. That's why I shared it. That's why I don't barely know anybody from Langenfeld. I know the unit people, so I want to support them, but getting the word out, like to me, it's really important. Like I want our young kids to see the best of the best. Yeah. I want them to see Rivers Hendrick, who's from Atlanta and is riding at Terminus and is, kind of climbing her way up in the global scene, under kind of Anna Nickstead's like tutelage, right?
Couple badass chicks right there.
Yeah, I mean, right. So, but just seeing that there is still a global scene, but like those that are going to compete, like the Rivers, are few and far between, or the Stuckey brothers, but I think our sport needs to take a step back and go, how do we get the elite riders to properly be professional athletes, to be paid, and have the contest really be focused on them, to where there is ultimately an end goal. Otherwise, the up and coming female riders and male riders, like, are you just ultimately trying to be a social media influencer, or is there something at the top that actually can make you a pro?
Yeah.
And that's why things like LAO, the events in Lithuania coming up, nationals, worlds, like yard sale, I hope yard sale, like at the end of the season, is like the cherry on top.
Yeah. Something everybody tunes into.
Yeah. But again, it's like just seeing the best throw down and have something
on the best setup.
Totally
out there. Yeah.
Have something to aspire to. So it's both, and it's grassroots and that, because I know some people are gonna be like, oh, I mean, look at all the grassroots stuff that we're doing, and I'm not anti, but it gets watered down, and is it too much like Little League or little soccer league stuff where it's just kind of gets redundant, when maybe there's more to wakeboarding at the local cable park than just having a weekly contest.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
Definitely more, would like to see a lot more event-based, I guess, events, you could say, kind of like what we did with Ripfest back in the day, and more so community-building riding events that get everyone of all skill levels together. I've never been a huge competition guy, so that's, kind of why I feel that way.
But you look at snowboarding, even Danny Davis, who's everyone's favorite snowboarder, like he's the guy you'd want to have a beer with. And he is a free rider, and he's been a contest guy. And snowboarding and skateboarding, they've all kind of like, do they do it just because of sponsors? Granted, they've got so much more money in the sport, but I really think it's a both and thing. And I think that's why Ripfest was special for us, because it had that, you get into a contest, and the adrenaline and the peer pressure, and it pushes you, right? And then the next week you're like, man, if I was this good, I could have done that trick to help my team out. So I look at snowboarding and go, okay, I know that these guys have an issue with competing even in their sport, and we're so far behind them, but I think we've got to figure it out. Just any way to make it better, because it's a part of it. Is it a necessary evil?
Yeah, I mean, I think it legitimizes the sport. You wouldn't have basketball, football, any other sport without competition. I
yeah,
think.
but when I hit a game winner playing basketball, you know who won, right? I
Yeah.
we didn't finish watching LAO. I don't know who won yet, but like we're going to watch the final rounds, or like even Gavin and Trent's round. Like I think they gave Trent both to put him through, and Gavin's run was epic.
Yeah, it's all subjective. I mean, that's the hardest part about, the industry.
Like for me, I was like a third run was appropriate there but it's you're left at whatever judge who's probably very good at what he does, or she, and put Trent through. Both of whom I love. I love those kids, but like that was a great example of it's forever.
It's subjective. You can't.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do about it. It's gymnastics.
Yep.
Getting close to
Dog
snowboarding. At
and
least.
pony show.
Yeah. Another good one. Let's talk about wakeboard media.
Hey, you know something about that?
A little bit.
Grab Matters podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
This is brought to you by.
Yeah. Where do you think we stand? I know, Mr. Stuckey has made some comments, and he has some interesting views on it. Where do you kind of stand with where we are right now and where we should be, or where we can be?
Supposedly Cable Mag is supposed to do something here.
Meaning state-wise? Or in the States?
State-wise. I think that wakeboard media, with all the different iterations of Wakeboard Mag and Alliance throughout the years, at the end of the day, it's just all still comes back to a hyper focus on boat, and then the boat companies that have paid the bills, and cable just is so far behind here. And so I would love to see us turn the corner from a media standpoint. And I just think cable still, like, how do we reach millions of Americans that have never done this sport? And I don't know, there's so many side roads we can go down with this.
Do you think we're just not ready yet? I mean, we don't have enough cables. Do you think that's why? You could reach millions of Americans, but some dude in Wyoming or, not Texas, but somewhere in all these states that the nearest cable is 6 hours away, at best. What value would that even bring to someone where they can't go try it out?
I think it's
or do you think you start there?
So the pendulum has swung. So if you talk to certain European riders, I think Dave Avia was saying this to me when he was in town, that wakeboarding ultimately is an American sport because of where it was invented. But now how much it's thriving in Europe, I think Europeans do have a bit of a justifiable chip on their shoulder about the brands that still hold the keys to pro contracts. And, for all the great smaller wakeboard brands in Europe, they just still haven't taken on, like Slingshot, Ronex, the bigger brands. You look at Liquid Force's impact in Europe, it's huge. But maybe the pendulum swung back, the sport was birthed here, but look at how it's thriving there. And maybe we need to put our tail between our legs and say, okay,
take some notes.
And that's why, as a park owner, like when people say, man, West Rock's a very European park, I'm like, they're doing it right. Like, I love the European scene. It's so cool. Granted, again, you can get on a train and be at another country in a matter of hours, and they don't have boat access like we do. And so if a boat person in here was in this discussion, I'm sympathetic with it. Like, the United States, people forget how big it is.
Yeah.
Like, for us to get to where Europe is from a per capita, like a density stamp, like we would need so many more cables. So again, how we can have more media coverage on a thriving market, which is Europe, heck, in Eastern Europe and other countries. I mean, it's in Asia. Like, there's so many great ways that wakeboarding behind cable has been just blowing up. But what kid that doesn't have a cable near him and is going to somehow follow our path and talk to the local city, and all of a sudden, boom, you got another cable? And that, to me, that's the key. Like, we have something, whether it's the pro athletes, we got to keep making sure the pro athletes are taken care of, and there's something to aspire to, but also from a media standpoint, wakeboarding behind a boat is so insular. And that's why it comes back to people preaching to the same choir, the same small percentage of Americans that can buy a boat. very small compared to the amount of people that could theoretically like a snowboard hill, buy a wakeboard and ride it at your local cable. So I think media plays a really, really important role in that. I don't know, like, how do we turn the corner?
Yeah.
Because in some sense, the Europeans don't get us. Like, they don't. Like, I've had this discussion with Quinn a few times. Like, Valdosta and their long-term impact from a media standpoint too. That's why the Space Mob is and the coalition projects are so crazy, because it's just, you look at the global impact that those guys have had from a culture impact, from a culture and style, what way of riding. It's amazing. I don't know. Do they get the love, credit they deserve? I don't know. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think you can talk about it from both ways, where until we get a bunch of cables, we can't have a truly successful media company that's covering cables over here, or the other way around. We're not going to get a bunch of successful cables if we don't have good coverage of, global wakeboarding. So yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a big gap though, definitely.
Well, and is X Magazine going to say, well, Dan, put your money where your mouth is, you say all that stuff, so why don't you put an ad in this magazine? And then you're back to the other problem where are the eyes? We spend X amount on an ad. I have no problem writing a check for copycats, because again, it's supporting art. It's supporting a female crew that's like
on the ground floor of it.
Ground floor, pushing things in the right way, and I think having a global perspective of helping girls just fall in love with the sport. So to me, that's a no-brainer, depending how small Copycat's readership is versus another magazine. But usage is always going to be the issue. So, JB O'Neill's a great example. Like, is he the biggest media person in wakeboarding right now?
100%.
Right.
Numbers-wise,
Yep.
For sure. Couldn't argue with that.
Yeah. So, and that's where we are. And so how do we most effectively use these social channels? And yeah, I mean, I had a funny sub story about him. The last time JB was in town, he and Graham were here for like a week, and we were filming and had a 2.0 pull up a bunch of never evers. And halfway through the class, one of the kids is like, "Is that JB O'Neill?" I didn't immediately say yes. I was like, "You've never wakeboarded before?" He's like, "Yeah, no, that's JB O'Neill." I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And it was just that great moment of, this is why what he's doing is so valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's filling a gap for sure. A very important aspect of the sport that needs to be covered. We were talking a little bit earlier about operating a cable in a seasonal location versus a year-round location. Mm-hmm. I know you and I have had previous conversations about this. What do you think? I don't want to say maybe the difference between the two is. Obviously, there's a bunch of differences. Do you think it's a good thing almost that some cables operate only, hopefully 5 or 6 months out of the year, probably 5 months, mm-hmm. versus year-round? Are there some hidden dangers almost of a year-round cable that you don't get?
Yeah. No, this has been something I've been pretty passionate about lately, coming out of the snow season. And I just had a really fun snowboarding season. Like, our whole family was on the hill locally a lot, more than we ever have. And my youngest is now into it. And it's just it's so good for the soul to get out in the winter and just get outside. And once wake season comes around, there's a renewed passion for it. And I think that whenever I called you about this, like, it just had a light bulb go off that the parks in the South in the U.S. will always have a problem determining when they should truly be open, because there are months and weeks where, are they losing money?
It doesn't make sense.
Just to trying to turn the lights on because, I don't care if you're in Orlando or in Rockford, Illinois, families have other obligations during the school year. So Memorial Day to Labor Day is still the main season. So, and then I also look at Europe, and you think about the success of European parks, and I think that culturally, they have an awesome time off, and the passion is so clear. Like, they've got so much crossover between ski resorts, or skiing and snowboarding and wakeboarding, and it goes back to the founding reason of why Bruno Rixson made what he did. He's like, where's the summer version of this? And so he invented it. Whereas in the States, we're trying to keep these cables spinning 12 months of the year down in Florida, and you lose an employee here, a manager here, and the features never move, and the cable breaks, and I think we need rest. Like, it's okay to have time off. So like Wake Island out in California, one of the most underrated parks in the world, unbelievable facility what Noel Carter's done out there. And I would say, I think Scott at Velocity's done a great job too, but Noel, when you see that park, and he could be open longer than he is, and he's definitely had some people annoyed with him because their season can be longer than April to like October, but I think he knows when to say when, and say, it doesn't make sense for us to be open, and we're going to try to close it down. And some of the people can go ride at VIP during the winter if they stay open. But I think that's where I think those California parks do it right. There's a little bit more of an off season, but of course Florida, winters are
February.
They're
January,
rideable,
maybe,
but yeah, what percentage of even Floridians want to ride when it's in the 50s?
Yeah, they're soft.
They
down
don't.
there.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think I'm onto something here.
No, I think you are. I really truly do. I know, just from personal experience at Action, the past 6 years or whatever, you're snowboarding in the winter. You snowboard till hopefully March, mid-March. You get a month and a half, maybe 2 months off. Cable spins, early May, and you're ready to get after it. You're ready to wakeboard. Come August, September, you're dreaming about snow again. You're thinking about snowboarding. You're kind of getting a little bit burnt out on wakeboarding. And I think that's good and healthy. It's a healthy relationship to have with both sports. And I think we see that with snowboarding. Year-round snowboarding doesn't exist except for the ultra professional and wealthy who can travel out to Mount Hood or go, overseas somewhere. And I think that's been very healthy for their culture as well, to have that time off and to skateboard in the summer or do whatever, and then have a new energy and be fired up for it again when it starts snowing.
Totally. And I don't think we talk about the fitness aspect enough. The fitness aspect, can't talk.
You want to move that a little bit closer to you?
Yeah, the different ways that we use our body. As I get older, I want to, as Tony's movie's entitled, like, I want to do this until the wheels fall off. And that's also, again, I think why cable elbow, like all the ways that your body hurts from wakeboarding, because it's definitely more physically demanding than snowboarding. But I want to do this as long as I can. So that's, and we end up saying this to a lot of customers of ours, like, put the weights down, get outside, use your body in different ways, and it'll help your balance. It'll help your just overall fitness. So many of these kids are in like fitness gyms training to get a D1 scholarship. And I am so convinced the more and more I move away from college, as much as I obsessed and worked my tail off to play basketball in college. I have a few regrets about not playing more sports, not getting on a skateboard as a younger age, not snowboarding more as a kid. I just didn't. Like, I was so obsessed over basketball. So again, I think all this ties into that seasonality, and there's a time and a place to do all the things that you want to do, but you need to have that philosophical take on it. Otherwise it's hyper specialization. And how many times do we need to talk about burnout?
Yeah.
I don't care what sport it is.
So, what would be a solution for Orlando Water Sports Complex or MWC or anywhere to prevent that burnout? Because shutting down 3 months out of the year, you're going to have a very small minority, but very vocal and loud, be upset with that.
Yeah, I think maybe it would force them to go to a couple of their parks that do stay open year round. To me, maybe it's more of an extended Sabbath for their employees and their equipment, and just, that's why we're closed. Let's bring it back to us. The reason we're closed every Monday during the year, even though we miss out on certain revenue days, I want to take that Monday to be with my family. Usually it's fixing the cable. She's my mistress.
You can bring the family there, though.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they're old enough. They run around. They love
Max
fishing.
will be able to crank a wrench here soon enough.
Yeah, right. Get to work, boy. But yeah, no, I would be curious to see like how beneficial a month off for a Florida park or two when it's just cold enough to where Floridians are like, no, I ain't putting a wetsuit on. What's a wetsuit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you approach it the right way as well, I don't
Yeah.
think you'd get all too much pushback.
Yeah.
All right. We can do a little bit more on boat riding, and then we'll jump into another guest question from one of your favorites.
Taylor needs to DM clarification.
He will. Oh, he will.
I would love to chat it through with him because
let's talk about a little bit more about boat riding. I know we did touch on it a little bit. That's how you started getting into wakeboarding. What have been some of the big changes you've seen on that side of the sport? Obviously, you don't ride boat anymore, really, ever.
if I do, I try to slalom ski.
There you go.
Seriously, everybody go down to the boarding school.
Why is that? Why would you rather
go visit?
Wake's too big for you now?
Travis, it is. No.
Yeah. Seriously.
No, it's I think the nostalgia and it's so different than what I do all summer long on a wakeboard, that when I do get boat time, like it brings me back to my childhood, like that connection I have with my dad. And so there's for sure a sappy element to it, but I just genuinely love ripping turns. Like it's fun. And so I try to ride boat like once a year when I get time to do it. That's the other problem, is when I do have time, I probably need to be with my family, or, what are the challenges to boat riding now, or what? I mean,
no, the difference between you growing up riding boat, it seemed pretty accessible, easy, nothing too crazy, and versus now boat riding. It's wildly different now than it was 15 years ago, even. Do you think that's a detriment to itself where it stands now? Do you think there's any kind of steering the ship back into a direction where it's more accessible to a bunch of people, or do you think it's kind of become just its own super pipe,
I think the ship has sailed.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think so if you watch Dear Rider, when competing and snowboarding started, it was all time trial based. I had another light bulb watching that movie going, oh my gosh, interesting. It was so balanced at the beginning because they were just racing down a hill. So the moment you inject gymnastics into any of these sports, and we've seen it in snowboarding, we've seen it now in wakeboarding, the riding level, I mean, who knows which boat riders will watch this. I hope they watch this and listen to your podcast, but they're so insular. They are so in their little world. It's this Orlando centric bubble, and the riding is the best it's ever been. I've watched the sport grow from day one, and I cannot believe how good all these guys are. The problem is that is the demand to learn how and get as good as these guys are and gals are, is it there? And will it remain there when ultimately those that have the money now to buy a boat, can I surf behind it? I'm a surf boat. Because that dad, instead of passing the baton down to their kid, I mean, I know countless in our area, in our community, that these guys that end up trying the cable once or twice, their kids don't even know how to ski. They know how to surf. They can do a little service 360, but the baton is not being passed down. So,
do you think, I mean, that's dependent on wake size, boat cost, or is it a mixture of, a lot of things that and is the reason we're here where we are today?
I think it's a lot of things, and I don't think that I would blame the way that the boat industry's followed where the success has been.
Yeah.
Like, why blame them? They're printing money right now. I don't know if it's sustainable because of how many lakes are not going to want 21 to 25 foot boats producing yacht waves.
Yeah.
I know it's already getting, banned in certain areas in Wisconsin and that alone is another topic, but it's really a big issue with the long-term growth. But I think ultimately that is the issue is there a legitimate demand for little Johnny and Susie to want to be the next Gunther and Megan? And with women being off the pro tour, are they purely resigned to the fact that they have to be social media influencers now? Like there is no pro, there is, can you get enough sponsors to support yourself? Because again, it's just like surfing is where it is, and people will watch an awesome video about John's like dryling, the way what he's tried to do. So I've had so many chats with people about trying to show wakeboarding behind a John boat and everything, but if the rider has a boat sponsor, clearly they're not going to show that they can ride behind a small boat.
Yeah.
Is that a kid or I don't know his.
That's a little dog. I don't think it's picking it up though. I can't tell which. It's the little one.
Oh, Clive wants it.
It's all right, Clive. All right. Yeah, I think wakeboarding's heyday was back when wakes were the size of, a Pro Star with a lot of weight in it. And I think riding at 17, 18, whatever miles an hour used to be ridden at was a good level to ride at. Now I think it's just kind of ridiculous. I don't think a massive wake riding at 23 miles an hour is something that anyone wants to do, in the same sense that no one wants to ride in a 23-foot super pipe and progress to the level of almost killing yourself.
Riding the ski lift, buy the ones at Mammoth, and I think North Star had one this winter. Like you just can't unless you've seen one in person.
Unless if you ride down the center of one and just look up the walls, it's
crazy, and that's 100% it. I remember learning behind a direct drive 205 Mastercraft. Pro Star 205, and I remember we shortened the rope just behind the prop wash, and I was able to get out of that heel side ninja phase way quicker because it was just I could pop back and forth going like 17. The wake was clean, but now wakeboard camps and schools have to teach one wake stuff, which I think there's some neat aspects to the one wake instruction to where I think learning a back roll now. Way back on one wake, going slow is a cool way to do it. But I think being able to get the boat on plane at a low speed and teach tricks, it was so much more accessible. And so that's why I always come back to the word dynamic, and why at my age now, and even the way I hope the sport goes, is I prefer cable. Not even a question, because it's so much more dynamic. I can carve, I can jump. I learn something new every time I'm on the water, or I'm picking up where I left off the set the day before, and the exercise and the community. Like to me, it's the all encompassing appreciation for cable wakeboarding. It's not a hate for boat riding. It's just simply, it's the half pipe of our sport. I think I first heard that from the Harris brothers.
Yeah.
I think Josh and Brandon were the ones that said that to me. And when they said that, I was like, duh, that's spot on.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And again, like, I don't ever want my take to be a hot one because I'm the anti, just because you own a cable now. Oh, you grew up around boat, but now you don't like us. No, I think that I look at some of the greatest boat riders ever and just wish, man, could you imagine the impact they could have had on people that never were going to get behind their boat? Think about how many guys that have had their own private boats. It's tough to invite friends, and they live a very private social media lifestyle, and they do cool events here and there. But ultimately, our growth is in community, and yeah, I always tell every boat rider in our area that does come out and try the cable, let me save you gas money,
especially this summer.
Yeah, yeah, but let me save you gas money because you are so fortunate to have that awesome family boat experience. But when your son and daughter invite their friends out with you, do you want to spend half the day turning the boat around? It's fun teaching. Like, I'm not saying teaching behind a boat's drudgery, but if you let me save you gas money, now when your friends, the friends of your kids, can't go behind your boat, now you've grown the sport. Because where are your kids' friends going? West Rock.
Yeah.
OWC, Valdosta. And when you can invite them, then great, they can spend time on your boat. But that's where I think we miss each other, is that the boat people still just in the US, they don't see the reason. They may have tried it once and not been good, so they gave it up.
Do you think there's an aspect of the boating industry looking down on the cable side of things, or the boat riders? Because I know, I've heard countless times at several cables, a boat rider will come out a couple times a year and they'll kind of scoff almost at cable riding like it's not a legitimate aspect of the sport.
A training facility.
Yeah, it's practice.
Practice for the real thing.
Do you think that has any? I mean, you think that's an aspect of it, or do you think it's a bigger? Obviously it's a bigger topic as well. But do you think that perception still is out there? Do you still get that at West Rock?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I tried cable, and I fell off the dock, and I had a bag of tricks behind the boat, and so I think whether it's us trying to get snowboarders on the cable or us trying to get boat, it's very similar issues.
Yeah.
Selling people that just don't want to kind of have to be decent for a while or bad and have to relearn, or I think that's a lot of it. There's an intimidation.
It's like an ego shock kind of,
ego shock. There is maybe really simply put, why? Why do I even need to do that? Like, I've got boat riders in the area that I can't pay them to come. And then the ones that that finally do it and it clicks, it's just like, oh, why did I do that? Why did I waste so many years? I hear it all the time.
Not doing it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once they finally get it and they get over that, okay, I'm going to be embarrassed for a little bit. Yeah, there's an ego to it.
Drop the ego out there, everyone.
Come on.
Hit the cable.
Yeah. Come out to the practice facility for the real thing.
All right. We'll jump into Matt Gagnon, one of your longtime favorite employees.
Legend.
He had a surprisingly dull question. I was expecting a little bit more from him, but he's asking what the long-term goal of the park is. Do you plan on expanding? Do you plan on getting a secondary park elsewhere that will maybe have an aqua park, working with other full-size cables to kind of bring the West Rock name and expand it? What's the long-term goal you're looking at?
I think all of the above. I would love to work with other parks, but I think back to like Taylor's question, are we jumping on bandwagons or trends, but ultimately we can just like cherry pick what other people are doing, and so I'm not going to be paid as a consultant, even though I think West Rock's done some cool influential things in the sport. People can just take what we've done and replicate it. That's what you've seen, and people rip off Valdosta and people rip off, OWC, or, everybody's trying to be Liquid Leisure with being this huge Disneyland of, I could go on and on about the ways that we just kind of copy each other. For West Rock's future, I think I just am open. Like, that's why I love our industry. That's why I still try to go to WSA, the Summit in the Snow, and get to know everybody in the sport. Because who knows what opportunity is going to knock. Like, I love the sport and I love the people in it. And so we have been approached by a local business owner not too far from here about doing another project, not, within an hour away. And therein lies the question of does it make sense to expand into multiple locations, or does that water down my ability to run it properly? Because then I'd have to hopefully get Matt to come back and work and run the other one, because to be honest, like guys like Matt don't grow on trees.
Yeah. So
he thankfully has an awesome job now, but people like him, and then I'm sure every cable park owner in the room here could say they could think of one person they wish they didn't let leave. Matt's on the East Coast now, and so if we can't retain people, it's hard to expand to new locations, because that's when multiple locations, while in theory sound good, but I don't know.
Unless you have the right people in place.
Oh yeah. You just immediately the culture sucks, or something happens, or the cable breaks, because it's like the game of telephone in a classroom. I teach you how to do something and you teach the person next to you, and you're like, whoa, that's not what I taught you.
Yeah. You lose a lot.
And then Noel Carter at Wake Island, he's a big fan of just making one facility the best you can. And a lot of days I think he's right.
Yeah. So
we'll see. I mean, I have dreams and visions about the US, and I would love to see what else we can do. But the boat companies that are backing parks, I don't think they're knocking on my door. You've got Action down in Florida. You've got ACTION in Michigan, who's got the boat dealer behind it. So for us as an individual kind of mom and pop shop, it's pretty tough to expand without corporate money.
Yeah, doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Okay. No aqua park anytime soon though.
If we dredge the lake, maybe. I don't know. Despite what some people think about it, I love the unit surf pool.
Really?
Big fan.
Is that something you would possibly do here?
If we could physically do it, I think yes. Because again, the difference between an aqua park and a surf pool is that you look at the surfing industry globally. Why is wake surfing so popular? Because every dude in the Midwest
Wants to be a surfer dude.
wants to be a surfer dude.
Yeah.
He now is young, successful, can buy a wake surf boat. That dude wanted to surf. I have one of my best friends from childhood. I couldn't pay him to come on the boat with me. What's he doing now? Owns a lake house, wake surfs. Couldn't pay him to come wakeboarding with me as a kid. Love him dearly, but he's a wake surfer now.
They'd be amped to try that unit surf pool though. Yeah.
I mean, I think in certain markets where wake surfing is going to get banned, because it will,
Yeah.
and is, I think they're great. Now, the Kelly Slater style, large wave garden style pools, I think the cost of development is just
Through the roof.
through the roof. But yeah, I think you'll see them in the Midwest at some point.
Be cool. Hope
Yeah.
so. One day.
Yeah, and all the brands can, I mean, a lot of those wake surf boards I think would be pretty appropriate too.
Yeah.
So it's not, I mean,
Still keep it in the family there in terms of the wakeboard
yeah,
industry.
I mean Rusty was making wakeboards way back in the day, and some of those surf brands were sort of involved, but ultimately I would love to see, Sling, LF, Hyperlight, these brands that are making good boards that are in our sport, paying our riders. If we have more surf pools.
Yeah. Be able to expand but still keep it within.
Yep.
All right. Deep one. So
Uh-oh.
you're a husband, father, model, wake park owner. I'm sure you could go on and on about this, but how do you balance
Is
all
that
that?
your way of saying don't be long-winded?
No, please be long-winded. I still don't have to pee yet, so that's great.
You
Yeah.
might need a refill here in a second.
How do you do that? How do you balance all that?
The order is correct for one. Like,
I did think about that before I wrote it down.
yeah, no, I don't make any qualms about the fact that like it's important to list like husband first, because if Amy and I aren't like doing well, all else fails. Like we are a unit. She does all the back office work for Westrock, but that is my life partner. And so, that's where owning a cable, the first impact has been on the marriage, where, it's just countless hours. I've always got an excuse of why I'm coming home late. It's tough. And so I knew early on that with our kids, I didn't want to be a soccer mom. No offense to soccer moms, but I think people get the phrase, where I just didn't want to be obsessive over my kids' success in wakeboarding or any sport, because I was so driven in basketball. And my dad was driven, and he was so focused on pushing my brother and I to success, in a good way. I think a balanced way. But owning a cable, of course, the last thing I want to do is have kids grow up and hate the cable.
Yeah.
So the way to balance it has been just me working as hard as I can, trying to care for our employees and build solid relationships with our employees to where they are brought into our life, because if they don't know how hard it is on our family, then they're just going to clock in and clock out. And I think that's part of one of the secrets of Westrock's success, is that our employees, they get how it's pretty familial. Like the family involvement has to be important, to where we all are like in it together. And when their time comes to move on to a big boy or big girl job, or we are fortunate because we still have these people come back. I think the Matt Gagnons of the world, our kids call him Uncle Matt. There's a reason for that, because Matt, like, he's this kid from the suburbs who came out to try Westrock. He had just learned to wakeboard, and now the kids call him Uncle Matt. So that's it. The balancing of it all happens through the relational aspect, to where I'm trying to make Amy the priority, then my kids, then staff, then the park, and just trying to keep, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, building an important culture, or not an important, building a good culture at the park gives you something that you can lean on in times of, maybe you got to spend time with your family or whatever. You've built such a community in terms of the people that ride there, and obviously the people that work there. It's something where they feel as though they're not just working for you and you're signing their paycheck. It's no, this is, our park as well. And we love and respect Dan. So we're going to, kind of put our all into it. And it sounds like that's something that's benefited you, throughout West Rock's tenure so far.
Yeah. Love, I say it a lot, love people first, then the sport. And that goes back to why we coach the way we do. Like, because I'm loving our customer rather than just taking a transaction. Same thing with our employees. And some of the best advice I think I've had in my life has been just do not commodify relationships. And what I mean by that is if you turn even your most intimate relationships, your spouse, business, whatever, as a commodity, what can I get from you? If everybody in your life is a commodity to you, it doesn't end well. And so if I'm only friends with the slingshot rep, Adam Sinclair, whom we know both very well, like if I only am friends with him just about what I can get from him, it just doesn't last because it's fake.
Yeah.
Dude had, gave birth to their second kid was it last week or whatever, like trying to not bother him. I definitely still was texting him when I shouldn't have. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. Life goes on here, but I know, and he tried to give you some space. But again, it's little things like that where don't, just because he provides slingshot product to me and I've got customers like, I want this. How can I always, in our staff, like they are people. They are, if they were in the room, they'd laugh because I say this all the time. I hope that these years at West Rock are some of the best in your life, that you'll look back and go, man, what a time. And that only happens if I'm not just like, do this, fix that, clock in, you suck. Life's too short. So.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to wakeboarding. It was a good...
Enough the serious stuff.
Well, there's some more serious stuff coming, but yeah, so you've seen, since you've built such a, incredible park, you've seen a lot of pro riders come through your doors. I would say probably more so after the 2.0 days. Once you did get the full size of that, kind of when you saw, a lot more attention drawn to the park, a lot more people coming through. Is that, safe to assume?
Yeah, it's just full size are just easier access. That's one area where they are like ski resorts, just they are so much more approachable and just being able to take lap after lap. So we saw a bump.
Yeah.
For sure.
Are there any, notable experiences on the good and bad side of pro riders coming through that, I think we could elaborate on both sides. If you had a bad experience or a good experience of a pro rider that came through, is there any ones on the tip of your tongue there?
You're trying to make me name names.
No, you don't. You don't have to name names. I can name them if you want, but
okay.
No, we don't. We don't have to get that deep. But on a serious note, I think that's something pretty important to talk about.
Yeah, I've always been open with any pro that wants to be a part of West Rock's community that I am for them. Like my dad was a team doc at Northern Illinois University, and I remember learning early on.
Go Huskies.
Yeah, right. And at whatever point I learned, like the average lifespan of a college / and then into pro football player is so short, and wakeboarding is barely different. The Sean Murrays of the world are few and far between, right? And so whichever up and coming rider hits us up on social media and wants to come visit, like I am for them. I'm a rider who loves the sport. And again, I talked about it earlier. Like I want the top of our sport to be clarified and the brands to support those that should be supported. And so I don't know, top experience. There's just been so many good ones.
I mean, Johnny D comes through a lot.
He's family now.
Yeah.
He's family now. He and I talk probably a couple times a week. And, Graham and JB and Gunther's been through, the Space Mob crew, go down the list of the cable riders that do recognize they need to travel outside of their little sphere. Again, I'm for them, and they've all just been great. Like, the only awkward thing is the one side of the business that'll tell you, don't let them ride for free. And I'm like, if Joe Schmo Pro lived in our backyard, it'd be different. We'd have to come up with some kind of pro pass. So for me, it's easier to justify free riding. When we've been open during some busy, like when a cable park an hour from here, the Quarry, when they hosted a big event, we got flooded with some pros that just show up expecting to ride. To me, it's almost like a litmus test.
Yeah.
Like, if you show up and throw your card down and you're smart enough to know that you can write that ticket off, it's a business expense for you.
Yeah. Bring that taxable income
Chances
down.
are I may take your one time, but I may say, you get it.
You're good.
You're good. Come back. Like, just be helpful. Don't make it all about you. It's the person that shows up. Here's who I am. Look how many followers I have. Like, what's the real ROI on you posting about me or about West Rock and tagging us?
Next to nothing, likely at the end of the day.
Because most of their followers, they're not in our backyard. But then again, you never know. Like, I've gotten on brands before. Like, how dare you not tag us when what percentage of your followers might live in an hour from here and don't even know we exist? That absolutely is a fact. So I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but thankfully not too many bad experiences.
Yeah, and I think when done right, letting a pro ride for free and them also understanding their role that day, it benefits everybody. They can ride for free. They get their name out there to a bunch of people that didn't know them before.
Oh, yeah.
And they're having all your customers have a good experience because, hey, so-and-so pro rider came in. They were awesome. I want to come back to this place. This is great.
Oh, we see it every time. If so-and-so spends a few days with us, they're going to sell some boards.
Yeah, 100%.
And even if they don't, then it's amazing the impact of what, John's time here, Graham and JB, and just, it's so influential. And that's another soapbox of mine, that if you live in Texas or Florida and you ride cable and you never come to visit us, what are you doing? If you're getting free boards and you're on a pro team, why are you not going to a few different parks? And so that's where the competition thing is like, is there more value in the pros in the age of social media? Is there more value going to certain parks and standing on the dock, getting to know the families that support that park and may or may not have bought your board? Like, I think there's a lot to that. And so that's my main issue with those that do not leave Orlando, because I think they're blowing it.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that play out in real time with JB. I think it was last summer, maybe the summer before, him and Graham, they just drove across the entire country visiting every single park. I have to imagine that paid dividends back in terms of them getting fans and their board sales and the impact they had on all those individual communities.
Yeah.
Showing I'm a pro wakeboarder, I'm not a douchebag. I'm a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what they'd say about the actual the financial, how they came out on top financially, but I do hope that, and that's why I will say these are the times where I really want to push the brands to help. Hopefully they're getting paid gas money and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's,
well, JB's just rolling in it, with their YouTube money. So
I hope he sits in this chair.
Oh, he will. He said he was down.
Oh,
so.
I love it. It's going to be so good.
I mean, speaking of pro riders, you talk to a lot of riders, whether it be pro or just some people who care about wakeboarding, mostly I would say via Instagram, probably.
Yeah.
Do you think that has, a measurable impact on where you, I don't want to say stand in the industry, but maybe the clout would be a better term that West Rock has, because you involve yourself so much in everybody, everybody's riding, and how you kind of consistently talk to a wide range of people on a regular basis?
It's a global community, There are so many riders that I've gotten to know through DMs, the Alex Figgins of the world, the Alex Aubachs, even some national people that do end up visiting us. Corey and Ashley Nuss come to mind. Their home park is Wake Island, and they are lifelong friends because of, connecting with us and then coming out to visit a few times the past, couple seasons. This young family that will get on a plane and spend their hard-earned money to visit us. And so I think it absolutely is it's integral to the life of West Rock, and I do need to at some point probably delegate more of that stuff.
Pass that off.
Oh, but it's so tough when you're telling a story and I don't know what would be a good analogy. If I as the owner who love wakeboarding, I've got those around me that love wakeboarding, but I still am ultimately the one telling the story.
Yeah.
And if I'm the elusive owner who's, no one talks to, and I'm not encouraging the sport. That's why I've kind of taken a different role with West Rock's Instagram account to just be on there and active. Like I could only follow 10 brands that we work with and not follow any of our customers or employees and just make it all this super private. Like, now again, it comes back to even the global community. It's a small sport.
Yeah. Tiny.
Yeah.
Real tiny. Kind of talking about the industry, what is kind of a general question? You can go whatever direction you want with this. What's an area now that you've been involved intimately for a while in wakeboarding that you could see, some improvement in?
Improvement. I mean, I think I touched on it in the boat discussion.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of, I don't know. Yeah. Take somebody who's now transitioning into Wake U, like Mike Dowdy. I look at a guy like him and just wonder, man, if he would have integrated cable a little bit, just a little bit, would that have been a detriment to his boat riding? If he would have taken a couple pages out of Gunther's playbook, what's the long-term impact of some of these boat guys who live very private boat lives? They can go out in the backyard, hop on their boat, Yeah, I think that there's something to that.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
kind of in the same general question. You visited a lot of parks. I would assume you probably visited quite a few before you decided to open up West Rock. What were some key takeaways you had when visiting whatever parks that you incorporated while creating West Rock? And then on the other side of that, kind of two questions at once, but what have you done that you could see an improvement that they could take from you, that you've done at West Rock?
I think the cable shape is key and the flow of the park. I mean, if you take a lap at West Rock, it's different. And so I wrote a lot of shapes and just was like, I like, and that can be a preference thing. There's certain people that like really long straightaways. So from a shape aspect, but every cable, again, back to the lake discussion, we've all got our demons to deal with lake management. And for us, the floating walkway even is just the biggest pain. I wish you could just swim to the shore and walk back on the grass like you can at Action Wake Park. Just awesome. So I don't know if you be more specific, but I think like there are a lot of little details that I think we do right. Again, to me, it's the top down cultural coaching stuff. But when it comes to the physical aspect, I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't have anything in mind. I don't know if you had anything that you had seen. It seems like you go to Florida every off season, at least for a little bit. Check out some cables down there. If you were to give tips to, year-round parks, maybe you've already touched on this, but, what would they be in terms of the culture you see and, how they're run? I mean, you don't have to answer it. There might not be anything, Everybody's
just got such a different setup, some of the big Florida parks might listen to my idea about a month off or whatever and just say, oh, that's stupid. We got to keep people employed. They're already paid. Just why not just, and they may correct me and say, oh, well, when we turn the lights on, it still makes sense. So you're wrong. I just don't know the ins and outs. I just think looking at Europe and I see how successful cable is, and then looking at the problems the U.S. has, there's something going on. So again, people just disagree with the way we do things. So like I've talked to others about reservations. They're okay with having busy stretches of time and having they're just like, nah, man, we looked at reservations and don't agree with it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Teach their own.
Yeah.
Could work.
Yeah.
I got to fix my mic, but you can answer this question while I'm doing that.
Okay.
Who is the greatest of all time wakeboarder?
Oh my goodness. Greatest of all time.
Should be easy, to be honest.
It should be?
For me, it is.
Okay. I know that Raf is probably the clear one. But I just look at maybe it's the coulda, shoulda, woulda for me with some of these other guys. You know, the Byerlys, the Murrays, the Vandals. You know, I do look at best overall, and that's why Raf is so important in our sports history. You know, Parks did the Indian line stuff on cable. And maybe it was just the era, but maybe it was also just the time in which Parks was coming up, and the where OWC and his local parks where he just didn't I don't know, didn't ride there a bunch to make it a ton of what he was doing. And
hit me with the name.
Oh, I would say Raf.
Okay, you're saying Raf.
Oh, I'm saying Raf.
Okay.
I'm saying Raf, but there's no way to
You're
answer.
saying best, so I don't know.
There's no way to answer this without giving. Like, I have to talk about a bunch of other
You
people.
got to talk about Byerly. You got to. I mean.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of names.
And I look in and then wherever the skate is, looking at like the
Thomas.
role that Thomas Harrell played. Is Thomas the GOAT? No, he's not the GOAT. But man, people don't understand.
He's one of the boats. One of the best of all times. That's for sure.
Oh my goodness, the impact that he had on wake skating and wakeboarding. Period. So, but I will always, like, up and coming riders, I'm like, you need to look at if you're not trying to take any pages out of Sean Murray's playbook, your eyes are not open.
Yeah.
He's a well-rounded human being, loves his family well, is adapting as he's gotten older. I wish he rode more cable, but then again, I know who's paying his checks. But he's up there, you just have to, because I'm so passionate about the sport's growth. And that's where, until I met Raf last summer, like the fact that he came up and we're kind of not Westrock, but some of the winch clips, I think in his latest movie or final movie. Until I met him, I was always worried that like he was going to be another guy who just kind of had this really awesome impact, but was kind of too cool for school, a little too elusive. Was and I don't know enough about Terry Hawkinson and some of the snowboarders that were the similar character in those sports.
The quiet killers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Unbelievably impactful. I mean, Terrier. Yeah. Maybe, would you agree with that comparison?
Yeah. I honestly never wanted to meet him because they say, never meet your hero. So I didn't want to meet Raf and be like, oh, this guy sucks. Like he's no longer.
We were all like, this guy, what a good dude.
Awesome.
And I knew Ollie a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're solid. They're solid. And so he came at the right place and time. And this is like the whole Jordan Kobe debate, or LeBron or whoever. Like, is Jordan really the GOAT?
Yeah.
And
he is.
Right? Jordan is.
Yeah, Jordan.
He is, and I think that people miss the nuance of this one, and you don't hear other, one of our favorite podcasts, The Bomb Hole, when they bring this discussion up. The thing about Jordan is that he was born a certain year. He rose to stardom during a certain, time in history, and this is probably just butchering Malcolm Gladwell's, was it Outliers or?
Yeah, I think so.
But basically, the connection between his unbelievable drive and talent and the way he forever revolutionized footwear and marketing for athletes. That is why, excuse me, his stats and his impact on basketball are tough to refute.
Yeah, it can't be those rings, but
no, but it's just, oh my
his,
goodness. Like there will never be a Jordan. You just can't, there will be somebody more talented than him. And that's where the Kobe thing,
yeah,
the way Kobe emulated him. And so we just see, and I don't want to belabor this point, but you go back, you look at wakeboarding and just look at how awesome Byerly and Parks and those, even before those guys, and so many that came that have, and I love how Parks has stayed involved. You know, he's been creative with his red ball involvement. And, so anyway, there's my long answer to who's the GOAT, but I agree with you.
Yeah. I think there'll be some interesting answers down the line here.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people do think it is Raph. What's your favorite grab?
I feel like you're going to tell me it's Indy or tail.
Tindy?
I don't grab Tindy.
It's Indy for you, right? Or is that just your go-to?
I would say Indy or tail.
Okay.
My favorite boat trick, if you and I rode boat tomorrow, I would do a switch mute 180.
That would be the go-to.
Yep. Favorite trick. Cutting in heel side switch, grab and mute. And you can't say half cab in boat if we're being proper, are we?
They say it in snowboarding.
Half cab? So I'd say, I always said half cab 180 growing up, but I was like,
well, you can't say half cab 180 because half cab would be 180,
yeah,
right?
I think wrongfully called it a half cab growing up.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
talk to Steve Caballero. I'll have him on one day and we can grind that one out. What is wakeboarding?
Yeah. I like tail and Indy, and I've tried to grab method because I love that whole discussion about the history of the method grab.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm just not a contortionist. I don't have it in me to move my body to like, and whether you're in front of the boot on the heel side.
Doesn't count, by the way.
Doesn't count. Interesting.
On the record.
Okay. I mean, what about a skateboarding method? Don't they do like it's like, isn't it at the?
They grab the nose?
I mean, no, like.
I don't know. This is, I mean.
It's a good chat. I think it's valid, but I prefer a between the feet, board flat, not nose or heel pointed down method on a wakeboard.
Yeah.
Visually,
we were talking about the kind of turn down method style.
It's too kind of glidey. Like it's not.
It doesn't look like a method in my, like, I mean, yes, it is a method, but maybe it doesn't look too much like a method, or at least a method I think should look like.
Subjective. It is.
Subjective.
Yeah.
Before we wrap this up, I know I did want to talk about, I wrote just a note down earlier. You were talking about your father, and I know this was many months ago, you and I were talking about how the impact that video has, that I don't know how many views it has now, over 20,000, how to ride cable, basically. I just wanted you to talk about that. It seemed like you had some things to say about, your father's impact and how maybe if he could have seen what you've grown in, obviously it hasn't been too long, but is not a good question. I phrased that terribly, but do you know what I'm kind of putting down right now? That was garbage. That was just word vomit. Oh, do you know what I'm saying at all?
So how is my father related to the what is cable wakeboarding video that we made? Like
yeah.
Oh man. I think I'm following you. I mean, the reason we made that video was that it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And same with the corners video. There have been renditions of it, but not like what SR was able to produce.
Yeah.
And so, I just don't, we get such a positive review from those, response from those two YouTube videos all the time. Now, I don't know if what you were alluding to about my dad, like kind of him, what would you think about where we're at now with his impact on my life and water sports and stuff? Like it all comes back to the fact that they were my mom and dad were two of the most radically generous people I know. And, you know, I could bring friends on the boat anytime I wanted, and he wasn't asking for gas money. He was teaching people. He was like, so that's been ingrained in me to be, and even as a physician, you know, and all the debates about healthcare and about America being this awful place without having free healthcare for all. You know, you talk to a few docs and the way that they handle their patients, and my dad was one that, wow, any chance he got to wipe the bill away, he did, and the way he worked with people, and so that's the way that it's just it overall just impacts the way I view every person that walks through our door at West Rock in the legacy. And so tied to that video, it's like, what is cable wakeboarding? We couldn't teach that many people. And I don't care how much you want to talk about passing the handle behind a boat, but the way you're really passing a handle is with a cable. Unless you're handing somebody the keys, and this is a hot take, but I don't care. Unless you're handing somebody the keys of your boat, you're not passing them the handle. You're giving them an awesome experience, an unforgettable experience. And some of the stuff that they do with Wounded Warriors, and they're just incredible experiences, but in terms of passing the handle, cable parks are where it's at. And that's where my dad's, you know, impact on me and being able to grow the sport and hopefully give as many people that can't afford a boat the opportunity to now love this sport until they're dead and gone. I don't know if I answered
I really
your
dropped
question.
the ball on that one. You kind of picked it up and put it through the net, so that was good. That's basically what I was alluding to.
Okay.
I just couldn't get it out of my mouth.
We got there.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't have a whole lot else on these pieces of paper here before we wrap this up. Obviously, you know, anything else you want to get off your mind, anything you've been thinking about that you really want to get out to those, you know, tens, maybe even hundreds of viewers out there?
Well, cheers to you for doing this. We're
both empty now.
Yeah, pub beer, if you're listening,
That'd be awesome.
sponsor us. It's been a joy to be involved with Grab Matters from the day one.
A long time ago.
Yeah, and I'm not taking credit for this because you literally, the equipment, the drive, the brand, like, to get it to where it is now. And I do hope that this like gains some traction and some of these early episodes don't get too buried, but like I'm so glad to be a part of it. And, you know, you and I go a ways back now, which is crazy. And hopefully Blink and still be in a thriving cable scene. And as whether it's you, Dylan Mead, Matt Gagnon, I mean, I could list so many people that I hope that can somehow stay involved with our sport. Because if we're ever going to have the history that snowboarding now does have, it's going to be us having kids, you having kids, and keeping them in this sport. And who knows what the Midwest specifically looks like as with cables and just the growth of, you know, and something as small as a podcast like this, it has a part to play.
Yeah.
So cheers to you.
Cool.
Other than that, like, I love the sport. I love the people in it. We got to stop doing stupid shit. We gotta work together. Boat riders need to ride more cable. What else?
Stop doing stupid shit. I like that. Anything you want to elaborate on that, or
Oh,
just
my goodness.
generally stupid shit?
Maybe the next episode.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Episode 2. Anyone want to thank? Any names? Anything?
Yeah, parents to start. My dad passed away now, almost 2 years ago now. And mom and dad, my brother, my wife, my kids, all the brands that have supported us, all the people that have taken long-winded phone calls with me. Anybody that knows me knows that I've got a pretty chat.
Every phone call.
Yeah. But so here I am defending myself here for being chatty Cathy, but I think that I would leave us with that. Is I think part of our sports problem is that we have just stuck with the status quo, specifically in the U.S., and there's a dismissiveness from the boat world, I think, in some circles where I don't think we've thought deep enough about certain impacts of growing the sport and because it's easy to stay where it's when in certain places when it's easy. So I think that's why I definitely nerd out, and I think certain people will listen to this think, what an opinionated jerk. And I'd love to talk to them.
Yeah.
You know, like I got no hate for anybody that's come before me. And I know that everybody, my dad always said, you never know whose dog died. You know, that's the deep and serious part of it. But like when it comes to, let's put our heads together and really think about a path forward. Because if there are 30 more cables in the US, how much does that exponentially grow our sport? And how many more board sales? You know? So yeah, I'll stop rambling. But
No, that's good. I think that's the whole goal here is seems like a lot of stuff hasn't been talked about. So that's kind of the goal. And if people disagree, there's a chair always open to talk about any of this stuff. So
well, do what you try to do what you and I do to pat ourselves on our back. Like I listened to the LF Drop podcast with Tom Fouché, who's a legend, you know, one of the greatest cable riders ever. But I listened to it when I'm in my car, you know, when they come out with a new one, or if the new bomb hole, like I just, as young riders, maybe I think we didn't touch on is something like, as an owner, what do I want young riders to do? Like listen to podcasts like this in other areas, be a student of the game, be like John Dreiling. The dude is a student.
Big time student.
He is.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why when people are like, you know, didn't like his style and where he is now and the way he's been, you know, creative with his career, there's a lot of people like him, you know, the Dylan Millers of the world. One of my favorite people in the industry by far. Like Dylan, he's been so creative with making a long-term career. Wes Jacobson, you know, making the most out of a unique path, you know?
Yeah.
And so think deeply about what you do and why. And that comes back to why I think I get so chatty about this stuff. It's like, whoa. Think about who's come before you, you know, like study it, learn from places like the bomb hole and, you know.
Yeah. No one is ever going to give you a hard time about not caring. That's for sure. But I agree. I think, you know, Dylan, Wes, Johnny D, all those people, the reason they're kind of are where they are today is because they haven't just been focused on wakeboarding. They've been paying attention to the board sports as a whole, kind of to your point there.
And that's where you don't have to just look at the, man, are we core enough? Do we have tough enough rails? You know, if everybody's riding gnarly rails at every park and getting hurt every lap, well, you're not going to grow the sport that way. And that's where, again, looking outside of wakeboarding and just figuring out every creative way we can get people into the sport. So.
Perfect.
Yo.
I like it.
Cheers.
All right.
Again.
Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for listening. This is my second time doing an outro to a podcast. So see you next time.